For anyone looking to get into IT, especially networking, there's always one big question that comes up about a certain certification. Just how hard is the CompTIA Network Plus exam? We hear it's this gateway to a new career, but what does it actually take to get through that gate?
It's the $1,000,000 question, or I guess the $369 question, depending on where you take the exam. And you're right, for so many people, Network Plus is seen as that first fundamental step. It's the credential that proves you speak the language of networking.
Let's break that down a bit. When we say CompTIA Network Plus, we're talking about a globally recognized vendor-neutral certification. It's designed to validate the core skills of network technicians. Think of it as covering the fundamentals design, implementation, management, and troubleshooting for both wired and wireless networks. It's really that essential first credential.
Absolutely, Zoe. The term vendor neutral is so important there. It means you're not just learning how a Cisco switch works or a Juniper router works. You're learning the underlying principles of networking that apply everywhere. That's why it opens doors to roles like technical support, network operations, or even system administration. It's the foundational block.
So, it's the foundation for aspiring network pros. Which brings us back to the big question everyone asks. Just how hard is it to actually pass the CompTIA Network Plus exam?
The honest answer is it depends. It's completely subjective and really hinges on your background. If you've been tinkering with home labs for years, you'll have a different experience than someone who thinks TCP divided by IP is a new boy band.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer. The current exam, the N10-009, and just a heads up, the older N10-008 version is expiring in December 2024. It has 90 questions. You get 90 minutes, and it's a mix of multiple choice and these performance-based questions. The whole thing is broken down into 5 main areas: networking concepts, infrastructure, operations, security, and troubleshooting.
And that breakdown is key. If you already have some IT knowledge, the concepts might click pretty quickly. But if you're coming in completely fresh, some of those domains, especially troubleshooting and the core concepts, can feel like a really steep learning curve.
It's interesting you mentioned those two. Looking at the weightings, troubleshooting and networking concepts make up almost half the entire exam. That tells me CompTIA isn't just testing if you can define what a router is, but if you can actually figure out why the network is down and understand the principles behind the problem.
Exactly. That's the aha moment for so many students. It's not a vocabulary test. They give you scenarios, these performance-based questions where you have to drag and drop and configure things in a simulated environment. They want to see if you can apply the knowledge under pressure. This is precisely why just reading a book often isn't enough. Practice exams and hands-on labs are critical.
So, it's definitely passable for a beginner who puts in the work, but you have to go beyond just memorizing facts. You need that practical application. Now, speaking of other certs, how does the Network Plus stack up against something people often mention in the same breath, the CCNA?
That's the classic comparison. In general, the Cisco CCNA, or Certified Network Associate, is considered the more challenging exam. The reason is that while Network Plus gives you that broad vendor-neutral foundation we talked about, the CCNA dives much deeper into advanced topics. Think complex routing protocols and wide area network technologies.
And it's also vendor-specific, right? It's all about the Cisco world.
Precisely. It requires a really in-depth knowledge of Cisco's own hardware and its operating system. So you're not just learning about routing, you're learning how to configure routing on a Cisco device specifically. That said, I think it's important to remember that difficulty is still subjective. I've known a few people who found the sheer breadth of topics in network plus more daunting than the focused depth of the CCNA, but that's generally the exception.
That makes sense. So CCNA is usually seen as the tougher, more specialized challenge, but it sounds like they serve different purposes. The Network Plus is that perfect wide-angle entry point for someone just starting their journey.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. They're both valuable just for different stages and goals in a networking career.
So, David, if we were to boil all this down for someone listening, what are the absolute key things they should take away about the CompTIA Network Plus?
Well, first, remember that the CompTIA Network Plus is your entry-level vendor-neutral ticket into the networking world. It validates those fundamental skills. Second, the difficulty of the exam is entirely personal. It depends on your experience and how you prepare. Third, the exam itself is heavily weighted toward practical troubleshooting and core networking concepts. So don't just memorize, practice. And finally, while it can be challenging for a beginner, it's absolutely designed for them. It's a different beast from the CCNA, which is generally more difficult because it's more advanced and specific to Cisco technology.